this AI agent system just automated the style of these Twitter threads, getting more than 500,000 views every time. Because if you haven't seen them over at Twitter, there are these accounts who are providing a lot of value by creating threads that curate interesting examples and content on the topic that they're interested in. This account, for instance, I've followed him since before, and he was able to build his reach with over 250,000 plus followers now by providing a lot of value through this curation technique. And if we view his highlights, a lot of his best performing content are these threads where he provides interesting examples all cleanly laid out in a Twitter thread. And if we look at his Twitter analytics, you'll see that he's averaging almost 600,000 views for every post. So there's definitely a best practice pattern that we can learn from this account, especially since we see the same technique being used by this account as well as this account. So what you can do for yourself or your client is you can set up this automation once, and every time it's scheduled to run, your AI agent will curate these Twitter threads for you and auto-publish them in the frequency of your choice so that you too can automatically generate these Twitter threads that are specific to your niche. And by setting up this automation, it actually benefits you in two ways. The first is I think it's a good way to post more valuable content on Twitter and increase your reach. And the second is that it also helps you with your own research since you're already interested in that topic anyway, and you can just have your AI agent summarize these recent topics for you and hand deliver this content to you in the form of a Twitter thread, which is easily digestible. And if you watch till the end, I also show how you can customize this template for any niche that you want. Because if you're interested in other topics, like for instance, pets or dogs or sports and so on, then creating these Twitter threads are a good way for you to stay across on the news on your domain while also getting reach and a following like these guys do. And what's great is since we are using no-code tools for this, anyone can do it, even if you're non-technical. If you know how to operate a mouse and a keyboard, you're pretty much set. And I always say this because it's true, but learning about AI agents is also one of the best investments of your time, given the demand for it, which you can see if you check on Google Trends. So if you have the time, then invest the next few minutes learning about AI today, because this might just be one of the most important skills that you will ever learn. By the way, if you're new here, my name is Jay. We run RoboLabs, where we help mostly content businesses use AI in smart and meaningful ways. And we also run the RoboNuggets community, which is our education arm, where we have more than 1,000 members now, who are all AI practitioners located around the globe. And at RoboNuggets, our mission is simple, is to make AI easy to learn for anyone who wants to, no matter what your background is. And to make this as easy as possible, we'll also be uploading this template over at our community, which if you have that, you can just import it to the no-code tool that we'll be using, and that will create the automation for you without you even having to lift a finger. So that's a good shortcut if you're already a bit advanced. But if you're a beginner, don't worry, because we'll be going through this workflow step by step, because I think more than the template, what's important is for you to understand the principles of making an automation like this so that you can customize it for your use case. All right, let's dip into this. So the framework of what we'll set up is rather simple because it's only composed of two steps. This section here at the top will be to create our Twitter threads, which our AI agent will be taking care of. And then these ones at the bottom will just be to auto-publish those Twitter threads and schedule them on the times that we want. And the tool that we'll be using to orchestrate everything is called n8n, which you can try for free just in the link below. And very quickly, if in case it's the first time you've heard of n8n, it's essentially a no-code automation tool similar to Zapier or Make.com. But you can see right here in Google Trends that demand for n8n has already surpassed that of Zapier and Make.com combined, just because of how flexible it is with implementing a lot of the AI systems that are getting popular today. And it's also not that complex to set up if you have someone to guide you. And this automation that we have here is an example of an n8n workflow. And what we'll do is I'll just run this workflow so that we can go into each of these nodes when it completes, and I can take you through node by node how each one is set up. So that if you want to customize it yourself, then you can just take this template and personalize it for you or your client's use case. Okay, so that run has completed. So what we'll do is we'll just open each one of these so you can understand the principles of how it was set up. And here at step one, basically our end in mind is to have our AI agent come up with a novel Twitter thread that it can pass along to Twitter for scheduling. So very quickly, if we open this up, and don't worry about all this stuff yet, you don't need to understand that at the moment, but I just wanted to show that the output that we want from this AI agent would essentially be content like this, where we have this set of tweets comprising the thread that we will be posting, where the very first tweet provides context on the topic, and then you have further examples here, and finally a closing tweet, as well as a date when this will be scheduled. Which if you want to see how it looks like in the end, this starting tweet would be your tweet 1, and then when you open that, you'll see the tweets 2 to 5 are also posted in sequence. And then you have a closing tweet here, which I just found as best practice when it comes to Twitter threads like this. So now the question becomes, how do you work backwards so that your AI agent can recursively generate these high quality threads that actually provide value to yourself and your audience? So if we go back to our workflow, essentially our first node here is just a schedule trigger, which if we open that, what this does is just dictate when your automation will run. And you can change this, of course. Right now, I just have it set as once per day, which is enough in my view. But the real start of the workflow is this Google Sheets node, where its purpose is to get our topic for this specific run. So if we open that, you'll see the configuration parameters for this specific node. And if you're new to n8n, it's a good idea to just step back and quickly share this platform's common design of working, because for every node that you are configuring, you'll always have these three regions, where here at the left side, you have the input. Basically, these are information and data that are coming from previous nodes that are being passed along to the node that you're configuring. And this green region would be the specific configuration parameters for this node. So what you see here depends on what node you are setting up. And then whatever configuration you have here, and using the input from the previous steps, this node will now provide some sort of output in this red region, which it then passes along to future nodes. So if we go back to n8n, you'll see that same design of working for this node as well. And for Google Sheets, it's actually quite simple, because what you essentially have here is connected to my Google Sheets account, which if you haven't done that yet, you just create a new credential. And this is quite easy. There's a single sign-on that n8n already has. And once you have that connected, what you'll be able to do is find a Google Sheet in your Google Drive. So you see I have this Google Sheet template, which if we go to that template, there's just a few basic columns here where we have the topic that we want our agent to write about, a description of that topic, and then a couple of other columns here, which I'll go through in a bit, but they're mainly just for logging purposes, so that we don't lose any of the generations that we did. But to fill up this topic, you actually have the option to just write it yourself. So for my case, for example, since I stay tuned to a lot of AI news, I can just add in topics here very easily and just add in any description, and that would work. So I suggest you just start with that or ask ChatGPT for some topic ideas. But in practice, you can actually automate the population of these topics as well. And so I have this Research Robo AI agent active, which searches the internet regularly for topics, which it adds to that Google Sheet. So I'll probably cover this in a part 2 video. So stay tuned for that if you're interested in it. But of course, I'll be uploading this template in our community as well anyway. But going back to n8n, you'll see we have that Google Sheet connected to this node. And then all it's really doing is find the next row where the column called tweets created says for creation. So if we scroll to the right here, you'll see that we have that column, and it's simply finding the next row here where it says for creation as a status. And at least for this run, the topic is Higgs field Soul, which is a new AI model that got released recently. And so when that node executed earlier, we basically just got an output containing that row as well. So if we click away, the next node here will now be to take that topic and find high quality tweets that we can organize into our thread. So if you haven't used this node before, it's basically an HTTP request node, which is very popular in n8n because it's the primary way by which we can call on third-party tools and use them in this platform. And how it basically works is you set the method to post because we are posting a request, similar to how you would post a mail, for example. And using that analogy, you of course would need an address to send that mail to. And so this URL is where we are sending that request. And you can see here that we are using this service called Apify. And if you go to apify.com, you'll see that it's basically a platform for sourcing information online, and is one of the most commonly used tools by automators because they have a tool for pretty much every platform that you can think of here. So if you sign up there and you head to your console or your dashboard, and if you go to the Apify store, what I just did is to type in Twitter here, and it will return to you several options here for scrapers, which pretty much do the same thing. So what I just did is find the one with most users and try it out if it works. So if you click that, you'll see that the rate for this is very economical. It's only like 40 cents for 1,000 tweets. And the simplest way to use this would be if you click on this API, click on API endpoints, and find the one that says run actor and get dataset items, and just copy this URL. And if you paste that here, that basically will be the address that you would send this request to. Now, just FYI that Apify did make this really simple because they already included your API key token here at the end. But this token acts like a password. So if you share this template ahead and you don't disable this passkey, then they'll be able to use your Apify account as well. So just FYI. So for me, for example, I just plugged in a mock value here for illustration purposes. But now that we know where to send our request to, and we even have our passkey here to prove that we have the credential to request from their service, the next question now becomes, what is the request that we are actually telling Apify to do for us? And so if you scroll down here, you'll see that we are requesting through this JSON body. And JSON just stands for JavaScript Object Notation. So whenever you see these brackets and braces, it's just a way to format text that makes it easier for computers to understand them. So if you click on this expand button at the bottom right, you'll see that we have a couple of attributes here, which you can read in your own time. But just to highlight some of the important ones, we're saying here that we are getting a max of 50 tweets. But the tweets that we want to get, we're saying that we want at least 100 favorites for each one of them, which is just a good way to exclude the ones that are low quality. And then we're also trying to find those with a video because that is our intention for this case. We want to create threads that have a video in them. And then very importantly, to guide Apify with what we are searching for, we basically provided it our topic from the previous step. And the reason why it's green is because it's a dynamic value. And in reality, what's actually being passed during that run is Higgsfield Soul, which we got coming from the Google Sheets that we just set up earlier. And when that node has completed, you'll see that for this run, it gave us 38 tweets or 38 items in total, which if we go to the table view, we'll be able to inspect them one by one if we want to. But we actually don't need to because we'll have our AI agent look at this for us instead of us having to look at them one by one. So if we click away, before we go to our agent, there's just a preceding node here, which is a code node. And if you open that up, what that basically will do is to group those tweets into one item. So you can see we have 38 individual items or tweets here. All it really did is to group them into one item so that if we go to schema, we can pass along this one group to our AI agent so that it can take a look at all of those tweets in one go. And the way it was done is through this JavaScript expression, which if you want to understand this line by line, you can just plug this into ChatGPT. Because with JavaScript code, it can be complex, especially if you've never coded before. But the good news is I didn't really code this myself. I just asked ChatGPT to generate this code for me and then tested it to achieve what I want. But that's good. What that will basically do is to summarize in one group the Twitter URL, what's the text in that tweet, as well as this like view rate, which just to explain quickly what that is, that's basically this formula where I'm just dividing the number of likes of that tweet divided by the views or impressions of that specific post, which is just a good indicator of the quality of that tweet in general. But that's good because now we have this one corpus of tweets, which we can pass along to our TweetRobo AI agent. So if we open this up, this is basically the AI agent node in n8n. Again, very popular because it's actually one of the simplest ways by which you can set up your own AI agents. And in this config, there's just two specific areas you need to understand. One is this user message prompt, where if we maximize that again, all I'm really saying to the agent is here are the set of tweets you need to choose from. And then it's another expression, which is taking that tweets corpus and then just outputting it as text so that our agent can parse through this on its own and choose from the tweets there. I did add the second line because when I was testing this, I think there are a few tweets that are being captured that are quite scammy. So feel free to add that in or remove depending on your niche. But this section is your user prompt, which is similar to when you talk to ChatGPT and you chat to it. This user prompt is basically like sending a message to ChatGPT. But if you just provide this to like a general AI model like ChatGPT, it probably won't know what to do with that data. And so if you scroll down, we just have a system message prompt here, which if we maximize that again, you'll see that this is a much more detailed look into how we provided instructions for the agent to treat that information that we just fed it. So you can read this in your own time, but the important parts of this is us providing instructions to the agent on what its role in life is, which is this one, as well as the output that we want. And again, we have some dynamic values here because we want to instruct it to think about this topic, which is coming from our Google Sheets originally, and this description as well. So if you want to customize this, this is the section that you want to edit because I just put in a placeholder brand here. Maybe you have an emoji that you want to use consistently throughout your posts for branding purposes, and then a tone of voice, which again, you can just ask ChatGPT to amend for you depending on what you want and then paste it here. But if we scroll down, you see that there's just a bit more structure here on what it is that we want this agent to be doing. So we gave some instructions on what the main tweet should look like, which if you read through that, it just follows that example that we showed earlier. And then you have tweets 2 to 5, which are shorter tweets, and also the closing tweet here. And then the last two sections here is just a bit of guidance on how it will select the tweets from that corpus that we just gave it. And you can see here we are also instructing it to look for those with a high like to view ratio as our indicator of quality. And then finally, we have an output format here, which is important because if it's not structured correctly, we actually can't pass it on to Twitter for automatic posting. So I'll go through this in a bit more detail later. Finally, for the scheduled time, you can amend this if you want, but what I just instructed the agent to do here, since we are generating 3 threads for every topic, we're just scheduling the first thread for the next hour from this moment, and then the second and third thread will be posting in a time that is 12 to 24 hours from now. And then you can see we have another dynamic value here, which if we go to the result, that's just a simple expression to return today's time and date. So that's a system prompt. And if we go back, you'll see that when that agent ran, it now provided us these 3 threads, which is what we want. And then if you expand any of those, it now provided you your tweet as well as the URL that we sourced from Apify. And then we have a couple more examples there. And finally, closing with this final call to action, and a scheduled time, which is an hour from today. And then if we go to the second one, that one would be scheduled a few hours from now. But if you tested this and it failed for you, it may be because your subnodes are not properly configured yet. Because whenever you set up an AI agent, there are these subnodes that you have the option to set up. So the only required one is the chat model, which we've just set as OpenAI's ChatGPT. And to set this up, you just need to add a credential here by creating a new credential. And here you'll see it'll ask for an API key, which you can get by going to this URL and creating a new secret key there, which when you paste here, that will let you use any of OpenAI's models. So for this one, we just use 4.1 because that's the best one at the time of this recording. And that essentially will be the brain of your AI agent. Now, we also just added this think tool, which I think is just good practice to add to your agent. And when you add this in, there's already a placeholder description for this tool, which I actually didn't change anymore. n8n provided this for us. But what this will basically do is it will allow your agent to think about its output first before responding to you, which is more and more becoming best practice when it comes to dealing with agents like this. And then finally, we have a structured output parser here, which if we open that, what that basically does is provide guidance to your agent on the output that you want. So if we expand that, you'll see that we just have an example here of 3 Twitter threads. And whenever your agent runs, this just provides some guidance on what good looks like so that it knows that whatever output it produces, it should be in this format. So now if we go back and open our AI agent again and look at this JSON tab here, the only reason why it was able to output a format like this is because we gave it guidance that that is what best practice should be. But that's great. Now that we have our 3 Twitter threads, how do we now post them to Twitter on our scheduled times? And so there's just a few more nodes here to go through. And the first one is another code node, which just ungroups those items. Because right now, those 3 Twitter threads, we have them existing in n8n as one item. What we want really is to separate them into 3 because we'll be scheduling them one by one. And in n8n, we need to separate them out so that we can do that. And so there's just another JavaScript code here, which all it does is take those 3 items and separate them out, which if you go to the table, you'll see those 3 items here, all talking about Higgsfield Soul, but with different tweets every time. So now that we've prepped that, you'll see that we have another HTTP request here, where its function is to schedule it over at X or Twitter. Again, it's a post request because we are requesting from a third-party service to schedule these threads for us. And the tool that we are using here is Blotato, which I found to be one of the most flexible auto-publishing tools out there. And if you want to learn how to set that up in more detail, you can just check this tutorial that we have in our page as well. But essentially, we are making a request to Blotato to schedule these threads. We have our credential set up, which if you don't have that set up yet, you can just, again, click on Create New Credential. You can name this with whatever that you want. And then you'll see that it's asking for a name and a value. And under name, you just want to type this out exactly. This is as per Blotato's documentations. So it's just Blotato-API-key. And then under value, this is where you want to paste your API key, which when you sign up for Blotato, you can just copy under settings here in this section. So now that you know where to send that request to, and you've also set up the proof that you have the credential to request from that service, again, we just need to declare what it is that we are actually requesting in the first place, which again is in this body section, which if you open that up, this is just formatted based on Blotato's documentation on what their tool accepts. And you can read through this. Basically, we're saying that we're posting to Twitter, and the content for the very first tweet will be this one, where we're passing along tweet number 1. And the result of that is this piece exactly, which we have posted. And then under additional posts, that is where we are posting tweet 2, 3, 4, 5, respectively, and then ending with the closing tweet. And so you can see here as well how it translates as a result. And then at the very bottom, you have the scheduled time here, which is in UTC time zone. And so that's the format that we requested our AI agent to output it as well. The last thing that you want to customize here is this account ID, because right now this account ID points to my test Twitter account. So if you head back to settings and you scroll up, what you can do is to log in with Twitter. And once that's connected, you can just copy your account ID here and replace this number with that ID. So if we click away here, you'll see that the output returned 3 items, where if you find your post submission ID, that means it was scheduled properly. And if you go back to Blotato under calendar, if it was scheduled successfully, you'll be able to preview your Twitter threads there. So you can see we have the first tweet here, and then the second one, the third one, and so on and so forth. So there you've now scheduled those tweets. And so this last node is just to update our Google Sheet. So you can see it's connected once again to that Google Sheet we were working with. But this time the operation is to update the row that we just scheduled. And so here you'll see that under this column to match on, we're matching on the ID, which, to recap, if we go back to our Google Sheet, that ID is this column specifically. And what we're asking this node to do here is to look for the row that we were working with. In this case, it is the one with ID 3, which is this row. And with that, it knows which row to update. So if we scroll down, all that we are really instructing it to do is to mark the status for tweets created as done, which you can see here is updated. And then we just log the threads that we created, all three, as well as the schedule, into their respective columns. So if we expand this, you'll see that those were properly logged as well, if in case we want to go back to them. So that's just good for proper tracking and hygiene for your automation. And there you go, we are done. So when your scheduled time has passed, what it will do is auto-publish those Twitter thread for you, which is this one. And at least for me, who is interested in this space, it basically does two jobs, which is number one, my primary motivation is to summarize, find inspiration, and also take a look at what the latest AI models are capable of. And so this Twitter thread format is just a good way for me to do that. But secondarily, I think it's also a good experiment to see if you can grow your Twitter following using this method. I can't say for certain yet if it will be successful, but at least when I set this up yesterday, I already have a number of people who followed because of these posts. And then if you look at analytics, the main reason why my impressions or views spiked up in the past day is because of those Twitter threads. So that should be an interesting experiment. But if in case it doesn't work, then that just means that there's a component of the Twitter algorithm that I don't understand yet, which is completely fine as well. This is also version 0 of this agent, but if I were to improve it some more, I'll probably add in a component of a human in the loop so that I can have a seamless way of auto-approving the threads before they get posted, and also expand this so that it doesn't just research for Twitter, but it also sources latest information from sources like Reddit, for example. And then the third thing that you can do and explore is, apart from scheduling on Twitter, it would also be interesting to do the same thing for Blue Sky as well as Instagram threads. So follow along if that is of interest to you. For now, I will upload this template over at our community, which if you haven't seen that yet, I encourage you to check it out to see if it's for you. Several of our members, as well as myself, share a lot of paid opportunities and partnership collaborations here, so you can get started with earning from AI. And then, of course, we have in the classroom a lot of courses for any skill level. And each of these also comes with their blueprint as well as a step-by-step guide on how to set them up so you can learn to take advantage of the historic shift that AI is bringing. And we also have a lot of events and live learning sessions that we regularly do for the community too. And occasionally a few learning hangouts that we do in person as well. So if you're looking for a community of AI practitioners to learn with, then check out the RoboNuggets community just in the link in the video description. But there, I hope you enjoyed this short lesson. Consider liking this video or subscribing to the channel because it helps us a lot to provide more educational content on YouTube like this. See you guys on the next one. Thank you.